Hello citizens and welcome back. In today's video, I would like to talk about service beacons and how they are going to influence the dynamic economy. As always, if you like this video, sacrifice a like and a comment to the YouTube algorithm and subscribe for more. And here's a shout out to our amazing patrons for their support of the channel and the Armory. First, I think we need to define what a service is, because in real life just about anything can be sold as a service. But in Star Citizen the list can be narrowed down, at least for a service beacon system. We already have medical, transport, and combat beacons. Now, while these are in a very basic state, at least the medical beacons are very frequently used. And there even are whole organizations focused on medical rescues with the current version of medical beacons. There are some issues with medical beacons and service beacons in general, but we will get to that later. I haven't seen a lot of transport beacons or combat beacons for that matter. I feel like players can transport themselves very effectively, or if they get stranded they just log out. And I haven't seen combat beacons used pretty much ever. Mostly due to mission payouts being shared automatically with the whole party and profit sharing in case someone is looking for protection while mining or trading. Also, if you find yourself in a situation where you're under attack and need help, you will most likely be long dead before someone accepts the beacon, or even your attackers can accept it to help them find you if you're hiding. But what is missing? First of all, refueling. I'm not sure why this beacon didn't get implemented with the release of refueling gameplay, and it seems like a huge missing link, especially with the incoming release of Pyro in the next year. Next, towing. Again, with the release of the Argo SRV, I thought we would get this option, especially considering that ships that are in soft dead state can now be repaired. I also think that if this was an available service beacon, players would get wrecks towed to a more favorable location for salvage. And that would also tie in with the next missing beacon, which is repair. At the moment, as far as we know, there are two dedicated repair ship concepts, the Aegis Vulcan and the Anvil Crucible. This might end up being a very sought after service, especially in less developed systems or near a conflict zone. But it will be very interesting to see how it's going to play into component repairs and replacement. And finally, the one that might be the most interesting and the most popular, hauling. Now, hauling will be coming into the game probably this year, but I think that hauling service beacons will take a while longer. But the idea is very simple. Request that a player haul something from one place to another. This will be very useful for traders who don't want to transport their own cargo. Now, before we get into the economy of service beacons, I would like to point out that service beacons are supposed to be a part of a much larger system in the game. Service beacons are not just something that players can put out to get services from other players. Eventually, it will be possible for NPCs to respond to beacons created by players. But more importantly, service beacons are supposed to be one of the main ways probability volumes and quanta influence the physical universe. And that's why it's important to improve the service beacon system. And we will get to some potential improvements in a minute. So, what is the economy of services? Well, it's a little different than commodities, especially in how demand is created and supply is priced. The creation of demand is actually very simple. A player or an NPC needs something, whether that is transport, a tow, or some fuel. Now, some of us can call up their friends or their org to fill this need. But NPCs and those who have no one to call will likely put out a service beacon. That's your demand. Now, the supply is more complicated. There are of course players and NPCs willing to fill the demand. The problem is the price. How do you determine the price for such a service? Not just as a player but also as an NPC. An NPC providing services can't ask too little, because then players will prefer those over players, which is something CIG don't want. But fortunately, there are some factors that both NPCs and players can look at before they decide what is an acceptable price for providing a service. First of all, providing different services requires a different upfront investment. For example, a Starfarer is much more expensive than an SRV, so you can start factoring that into your expected payment. Next, you can look at the price of resources you need, meaning fuel or spare parts or anything else. And finally, you can look at risk and the reputation of the person requesting the service. For example, if you're in a lawless system, you might want to increase your prices. Or if the person requesting the service is known to have a bad reputation, you might want to require a higher payment as well. The problem is with how you match the requested price with the price someone is willing to pay, which is how we come to the improvements to the service beacon system. There needs to be a way for the service providers to register that they are online and ready to provide a service in an area for a given price. And then when someone is looking to create a service beacon, they can see which providers are available and what is their price range. The next major improvement would be in how the service beacon system handles reputation. Right now, it does have some degree of measuring the reputation of the provider and the requester, but it's not very good. It's mostly based on ratings by the users themselves, which are not very intuitive. There needs to be a way to determine reputation based on the outcome of the beacon. This would improve how informed service providers would be when accepting a beacon, which is always a good thing. However, sending or accepting service beacons is not particularly safe. There are many instances in which either the requester is robbed or the provider is ambushed. This goes back to better crime detection in general and impacts on the long-term reputation of the player. Same goes for successful service beacon completion. However, that doesn't explicitly protect the money of either party. But fortunately, we already have a system in place to handle that for refueling, and that is escrow. Before any further service beacons are brought in, escrow should apply to all of them. Overall, there is a lot of potential in the service beacon system, both for players and NPCs. For players as a source of income and an important resource when they need it, and for NPCs as an indicator of the economy and to generate dynamic content. I hope we will eventually see major improvements and expansions to the system. At the moment, it seems like more of an afterthought and is only used for medical beacons. And even then, it is sometimes exploited, which is not great and a major problem. But that's a topic for a whole different discussion. And with that being said, that's all for tonight. What do you think? Is the service beacon system useful? What other services would you like CAG to include in it? Let me know in the comments. Thank you for watching, fly safe, and I will see you in the verse.